it's a painful thought to think about death and to think about what is going to happen when, when I die, right? When any person dies. And it's not, kind of a question everyone has to confront, but I think a lot of people kind of live their lives kind of avoiding it, more or less.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily always avoiding the idea of God or no God, but they're avoiding the idea of the question, what happens to me after I die, right? And so they kind of stumble through life just trying to forget about that and trying to enjoy life to as best as they can, and then they get towards the end and then they're absolutely afraid because they still don't know. They still haven't thought about it. They still haven't done anything about it. So that's definitely, I think that's kind of a cycle a lot of people are in, where it's just, death is a painful thought, and so I will not think about it. I will do something that is less painful and is more fun.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, I think it's unfair, and I don't think we can just go ahead and say that everyone, all non-Christians, are either distracting themselves or in a state of denial, because while to some extent it might be true. See, I just went online and I just read a bunch of kind of perspectives of how do people deal with purpose? How do they find purpose without God, right? That was kind of some of my research. And what I found is that a lot of people are actually able to achieve a certain degree of peace and kind of purpose without God. They can fully accept the fact that they're going to die one day, and then at the same time they can just kind of be happy with their lives. So I have seen examples of that where they're just kind of where they kind of find a way to be content, in other words.
Yeah.
But and in that case, it's really all a matter of finding or creating a purpose to live for. For some people it's science or technology or family, kids, things like that, and that's what people live for, and they can be fairly content in doing that.
Yeah. So I guess there is purpose outside of Christianity, but the point I should make is that all the purpose outside of Christianity is purpose-based in this world, which is temporary.
Mm-hmm.
And it's corrupted.
And so people who have come to kind of be content and have a sense of purpose, they're thinking essentially for their life. They're just they're kind of forgetting about the fact that one day they'll die, and then, whatever they did won't really have made much of a difference. They're thinking more of, well, while I'm here, I'm just going to enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy myself as best I can. And really, that's one of the better, I guess that's one of the better mentalities you can take if you're not going to believe in God, is just enjoy life, I guess.
Or some people will say that they're going to try to leave this world a better place. That's a pretty common answer, or a pretty common thought.
They're working towards the next generation's betterment.
Yeah. And so there is a lot of good that can be done outside of a belief in God. A lot of good. But it's still it's meaningless without... Putting purpose in this world is meaningless no matter how good it is, because this world is a corrupt place. And so nothing you can do in this world will stop evil, which is the driving power of everything bad.
And then in the end, it, depending on how pessimistic, or you could call yourself realist, you want to look, all is meaningless, right?
Yeah.
And I think when we're talking about this, if you want to kind of think of like the biblical guidebook on this entire subject, would be the book of Ecclesiastes, which is, it's a fantastic and wonderfully depressing book, which is just basically King Solomon, the wisest man to ever live, just basically realizing one by one that everything is meaningless.
Yeah. See, King Solomon was incredibly wise, and he was very honest with himself, and so that's a natural conclusion to come to.
And he basically just was miserable in some ways, because he just couldn't escape the fact that, all these pleasures that I've been chasing, this thing and that thing, and I'm super rich and I have a ton of wives and stuff. It's just, in the end, though,
Doesn't mean anything.
it doesn't. His words are, it's vain and striving after the wind. So yeah, Ecclesiastes is pretty much the guidebook when you want to think of finding purpose in life, and if we're actually gonna, if I just read a couple parts of it, it kind of has some of the same ideas that we've just been talking about now. So just a quick bit in Ecclesiastes 2:24 through 26. There is nothing better for man than to eat and drink and to tell himself that his labor is good. So essentially, this is kind of, and Solomon repeats this thought basically throughout the book a few times, is that since it's all meaningless, basically just be content with your work, just be happy with eating and with the pleasures that you have, and just accept it. And drinking.
And I'm pretty sure he meant wine when he said drinking.
Eating and drink things that are good. just enjoy it. So that's basically, that's the conclusion he comes to, where, if you're thinking of from a temporal, when we're dead, we're just dead, everything's gone kind of perspective, that's kind of the view he gives as the best. But he continues here and says, but this also I have seen, that it is from the hand of God. For who can eat and who can have enjoyment without him? For to a person who is good in his sight, he has given wisdom and knowledge and joy, while to the sinner he has given the task of gathering and collecting, so that he may give to the one who is good in God's sight. This too is vanity and striving after the wind. So Solomon sees that, just living your life and trying to be satisfied with whatever you're satisfied with, that's kind of like the best you can do. But even then, person can't really have, even that is from God, even the good things that we can experience, God has given to us, and if we're just looking at,
so even if we didn't know that there was a heaven, we would still see all the good things we have and accredit that to God.
I mean, not necessarily. There's a lot of people who don't accredit it to God, but
yeah.
When it comes down to it, his thought is, this also I have seen, that it is from the hand of God. And if I read, there's another passage that's pretty similar to this, chapter 5, verses 16 through 20. This also is a grievous evil. Exactly as a man is born, thus he will die. So what is the advantage to him who toils for the wind? Throughout his life he also eats in darkness, and with great vexation, sickness, and anger. Here is what I have seen to be good and fitting, to eat, to drink, and to enjoy oneself in one's labor, in which he toils under the sun, during the few years of his life which God has given him. For this is his reward. Furthermore, as for every man to whom God has given riches and wealth, he also has empowered him to eat from them and to receive his reward. Right. As for every man to whom God has given riches and wealth, he has also empowered him to eat from them and to receive his reward and rejoice in his labor. This is the gift of God. For he will not often consider the years of his life, because God keeps him occupied with the gladness of his heart. So when I read that, he will not often consider the years of his life, that's most people. Most people don't consider death. They don't consider that, because they're occupied with the gladness of their hearts. They're occupied with things that feel good, pleasures, and just kind of being content in as much as they can, But there's this idea where, from a worldly perspective, the best we can do is just kind of enjoy what we're given in life, right?
Yeah. And that was Solomon's view. And he was obviously before Christ, and so he didn't have... That was the best he could have, as far as... There was no... Christianity wasn't invented back then. Or wasn't around back then, rather.
Well, I mean, they had Judaism, so he had his way of gaining purpose from God, which he gets to at the end of the book. But at least from what he was saying, is instead of striving for all these things, don't make them the purpose of your life, but when you get right down to it, it is all, in the end, vain and striving after the wind. Hey, thanks for watching. This clip came from an episode of our podcast, which we will have a link in the description below for you to watch the full thing, see more discussion about this topic and other topics.